Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder if what you see is exactly what is there, or if your expectations are playing tricks on your eyes? Well, this new study dives right into that question, exploring how our brains combine what we see with what we already believe. Imagine you see a picture of a football player. Now, what if that player had a jersey number like 71, versus a player who looked identical but had a jersey number like 17? Would you unconsciously think the player with the higher number looked bigger? It sounds strange, but researchers found that yes, people did exactly that. They'd rate the player with the higher number as physically larger, even though they were the exact same size in the picture. This suggests our brains have these built-in expectations, or priors, as scientists call them, that can actually change what we perceive. This previous finding is really cool. It means that things we learn, like how numbers often relate to size in the real world, can sneakily influence how we see things, even when there is no real reason for it to. It's like your brain is making a guess, combining the actual visual information with what it expects to see. This idea is called Bayesian perception. And it means our perception is a mix of what our senses tell us and what our brain already knows or believes. But here is where things get even more interesting. The researchers wanted to know what happens when the information from our senses isn't super clear. Imagine seeing that football player for a super short time or a really long time. Does that change how much your expectations mess with your perception? Especially when it comes to numbers, which need a bit of time for our brain to even process, right? So, they tested this by showing participants pictures of these computer-generated football players for different amounts of time. They looked at times like 250 milliseconds. That is super fast. 500 milliseconds, which was like a baseline, 750 milliseconds, and even 1000 milliseconds, which is a full second. They wanted to see if making the visual information clearer and more reliable by showing it longer would change how much the jersey number influenced their size judgment. Here's the basic setup. They showed people pictures of football players. These players were all the same physical size in terms of their actual pixel dimensions, but their jersey numbers varied, going from low numbers like 17, 18, 19 to high numbers like 71, 81, 91. Participants then had to rate how slender or husky the player looked on a scale. The key was that they did this with the pictures shown for different durations. They ran 3 separate experiments to compare the baseline 500 millisecond duration with longer durations, 1000 milliseconds and 750 milliseconds, and a shorter duration, 250 milliseconds. They did this because testing everyone in all conditions would take too long and make people tired. Each experiment compared the 500 milliseconds condition to one of the other durations. Now, let's get to the really juicy part. What did they find? First, they looked at how much people varied in their ratings. When the pictures were shown for a shorter time, people were less confident in their ratings, meaning their answers were more spread out. This makes sense. The less time you have to see something, the less sure you are. Longer viewing times made people's ratings more consistent, meaning the visual information was more reliable. Okay, so more time means clearer vision. Now, what about those jersey numbers? In the 500 millisecond baseline condition, they found exactly what the previous study found. People rated the players with higher jersey numbers as larger. This effect was statistically significant, meaning it wasn't just a fluke. This jersey number effect was still present when they showed the players for 750 milliseconds and even 1000 milliseconds. But here's the crucial bit. As the duration got longer, the size of this effect got a little bit smaller. The difference in ratings between high and low numbers became less pronounced with more viewing time. This is exactly what the Bayesian model predicts. When the visual information is more reliable because you are seeing it for longer, your brain relies less on those learned expectations or priors. It trusts the sensory evidence more. So even though the expectation is still there, it has less power to influence your judgment when the sight itself is really clear. But then they looked at the shortest duration, 250 milliseconds. And here is where it gets really wild. In this super short condition, the jersey number effect disappeared completely. The players with high numbers weren't rated as significantly larger than those with low numbers. Why? Because processing numbers, especially their magnitude, takes time. Previous research suggests you need at least 350 milliseconds for your brain to really get what a number means. So, at 250 milliseconds, participants likely couldn't even access that number magnitude size prior. It was like the prior wasn't even available to be used. So, even though the sensory information was unreliable due to the short duration, there was no prior knowledge to lean on, leading to an unbiased perception. This is a powerful finding because it shows that it is not just about the reliability of the incoming information. It is also about whether the prior knowledge we have is even accessible in time. If the duration is too short to process the number concept itself, then that concept can't influence our perception, no matter how unreliable the sensory input is. So, what does this mean for us? It tells us our perception is a really active, dynamic process. It is not just passively receiving information. It is a constant negotiation between what our eyes tell us and what our brain expects. When the eyes give clear signals, our brain trusts them more. When the signals are fuzzy, the brain leans on its past experiences and learned associations, but only if it has enough time to actually access those associations. Think about it in your daily life. How often do you quickly glance at something and make a judgment? This study suggests that in those split-second moments, your existing beliefs and learned patterns might be doing more of the heavy lifting than you realize, sometimes even more than the actual visual evidence. Of course, this study, like all research, has its limits. They used computer-generated football players, which might bring in specific expectations about athletes and their appearances. Future research could use more abstract shapes or images to see if these number-size associations hold true in different contexts. Also, they're suggesting using brain imaging techniques like ERPs to pinpoint the exact moment numbers become accessible to the brain. Overall, this research is a fantastic reminder that what we see is a constructed reality, a blend of raw data and our internal world of knowledge and expectation. It highlights the clever way our brains try to make sense of the world efficiently, but also shows the limitations when time is short or when our learned associations are either absent or inaccessible. It's a really cool look at the dance between our senses and our minds. What do you think about this? Does it make sense that numbers could affect how you see size? Let us know in the comments below. If you found this breakdown helpful, please give it a like and subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more fascinating insights into the human mind. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.